Hi there, if you want to learn how to create sound effects, then you are in the right place. In this video, I'll be breaking down a redesign I did of a short clip from the game For Honor. It's a sword duel, and actually in this video, I'm going to break down the video in kind of two sections. The first is going to be just going over layer by layer how I created everything, and then I want to go back into the redesign and then go over some of the key points, the key things that I think made this redesign kind of stand out or kind of a bit more impactful, and yeah, just made it a bit more present, and just go over some like design elements and design things that I think you could take away from this video and then apply to your own work. So if you want to check the chapters below, I'll make sure to leave those down there so you can skip ahead to whatever section you want to check out. But with that said, let's get into Reaper and let's get going. All right, so why don't we start at the top here, and we'll start with the gore slash. So for these first kind of a few hits, I try to keep them as simple as possible. So I was actually just dragging and dropping some sounds from my library on here, and I tried not to design it too much. So if you look here, you'll see I don't have any plugins or inserts in it or anything, except for like recenter to keep everything straight, but that's it. So let's have a listen to what it is really. All right, next here we have the sword stab, or the sword when he pulls out the sword out of the body. All right, next we have a few swings here in between the final execute move. All right, next we have the execute attack. Right, and then you have the sword being removed after the execute attack here. Then we have the body fall from the warrior who gets killed here. All right, lastly here we have the quest completed kind of overlay on the screen here. All right, and finally we have the crowd ambience here. All right, and those are all of the sounds for this redesign layer by layer. All right, so at this point, I want to go through and kind of touch on a few things that kind of made this design work together, and go over some of the techniques and things that you can apply to your own design here. So the first one, the first set of things that I'm going to touch on, they're going to be pretty quick, just because they're pretty self-explanatory things. But so like, for example, the first one here that kind of made a big difference is having this grunt here. And if you can, I always suggest that you, if you're doing a redesign, or if you're doing a demo reel or something like that, that you hire or pay someone who's like a voice actor to do this for you. Or you can also buy libraries that have some of these sounds, but it just sounds so much better than if you do it yourself, generally speaking. So here's one that I have here. Right, so I found this in a library, and it kind of worked perfectly here. right? It just adds an extra sense of realism to this redesign. All right, the next thing that I did a lot of is I used a lot of recenter to position sounds right in the middle of the stereo field, because in this instance for this redesign, most of the combat is happening right in front of you, right? So I don't want anything off to the side or sounding too wide or anything like that. It didn't really make sense for this design. So you'll see here, for example, I have it here on the high shimmer. I have a recenter on there. You'll notice here on my top layers here, like here for my swings, I have recenter, right? And basically all it's doing for all of these different layers that I have it on, I think I have it on some of these as well here. Yep, recenter here and recenter here again. So you notice a lot of these are on swings, but they're very wide. And that's because when I recorded them, they were kind of wide. So, but the point of me saying this is to put on recenters to position sounds where they're supposed to be. And generally you want sounds to be mono. So if you can, keep them mono and yeah, just be really aware of how wide your sounds are. So I've had students who would have sounds that are sounding really wide, and then their mix kind of gets really muddy really quickly because nothing gets positioned where it can be or should be in the sound field, in the stereo field. So in general, make your sounds mono or very narrow so that you can position them in the stereo field where you want them to be, and it can just make your environment that much more rich. All right, the next thing that really helped with this redesign is just adding a lot of different like gore elements. So especially for like the execute ability here. So I have some gore down here. Right, some like wet stuff here, some gore dripping and wet mush. I think I have the one here too. Right, there's another one. It's kind of mixed in with like a whoosh. And then I think I have this one as well, which is mixed in. Kind of has some kind of squishiness or wet elements in there. But yeah, just having different gore sounds and elements and textures really helps. All right, the last like quick thing I'm going to touch on here is just to use like really clean recordings. This is kind of an obvious one. But yeah, just make sure that whatever recordings you're using, that they're clean, they're noise-free as much as possible. That just really helps to build out this design really quickly. All right. Next, let's go to the second thing that I have here, and that is to leave room for your impacts. And this was really evident here for this effect here, for this execute ability here. So if you play this, right, you can really hear it, especially for these, for this layer here. Right, I really cut out the sound here, and it's really harsh. I didn't put on any fade ins or fade outs. I mean, I could have, I guess. I find it's a lot more aggressive if you don't put in any fades there. It still works, but right, I find it adds so much more to the impact, especially if you make space and room for the impact. So for me, for this one here, the impact that I really wanted to bring out was this metal one here. Right, I really wanted to bring that out. I really wanted that to be super punchy. And you can see here, I added a transient shaper, added a bit of attack, and then added crafter under it. It's kind of a little trick I sometimes use is like, yeah, some sort of transient shaper, and then right after having some sort of like clipper to like just beef it up a little bit helps. And then I also had low air on here just at that low end, which adds a lot more weight and body to the sound right before the clipper. So it just like beefs it up even more. It just make it way more impactful. So yeah, so that's one thing. And so obviously transient shaper, you have your low air and then going into a soft clipper. And then you also make room with all these whooshes, right? So if I didn't do that, I'll just bring these across here. Right, so let's say I didn't make space for the transient here. This is what it would sound like compared to this. Right, I don't know if you can hear that, but to me it sounds a lot more impactful. There's a lot more room for those transients to hit. The other one kind of sounds kind of all mushy and blurry, and it's just not as good. Could probably do a better job here of just making hitting the transients hit even harder. But for me, for this kind of quick redesign that I was doing here, I was pretty happy with the result of that. And you can see here, I did a similar thing or similar technique up here for this first one. So if you play this first gore slash here, right, you can hear it cuts off like really abruptly here. And that's on purpose because we have the next one that hits the transient right at this point here. So then, because this ends so fast and so hard, it's kind of jarring. But then you also get the impact right after it, which helps to bring it out, right? So let's hear it in context both together here, right? But if I bring this out and I just play out the file. All right, it's a little detail thing. You're probably not going to pick it up. It's kind of subconscious maybe. But yeah, it's kind of like these little details of just like making room for these impacts, for these transients, for the sounds to play in that help to really bring out those impacts, the sword hits, and yeah, just make it sound a lot more impactful and aggressive. All right, the last key point here that I want to share with you, things that you can consider, especially when you're doing your designs here, especially for like impacts and like battles, duels, sword combat, stuff like that, is to make use of low-end enhancers. So I used that quite a lot in this redesign. I actually used it on some of these execute layers. I used it on the execute remove layers here. So let me show you what I did here. So you'll need like really good headphones or monitors to hear this because right now I'm playing a lot with the sub. But yeah, I'm adding a lot of weight to the low end, which makes the impacts and just, yeah, it makes the impacts, the swords, and everything feel a lot bigger and heavier because I have low end here. So right now I'm using waves low air to add that those sub harmonics to the sound. So if we play here. It's a little subtle, but you really feel it in the low end and just punches right through, right? And I did the same thing here, for example, for this one. Right, it's not much, but it just helps to add a bit of weight to all of your layers, and as you start adding them together, it just makes it that much better. Right, so just play around with that. Don't overdo it. It's very easy to overdo the low end, the sub, but like pick certain sounds, certain places where you want to insert them. Right, it could be just certain layers. It could be certain sounds. Like for example, the executability here. This was kind of like the high point of this short clip that I wanted to create here. So for this point, this is where I wanted the most impact, the most transient heavy, right? The biggest sound to come out. So this made sense to use it here for this and the remove as well. It makes sense to maybe not have it on the other sword sounds, on the other slashes and stuff like that, so that it's not overdone and it's not kind of tiring to listen to over and over again. Yeah, so just be careful on where you're choosing to place them. That's kind of what I did here. I thought it went pretty well. So yeah, I think you can use that in your design as well. Just be choose very carefully where you put them so that you place them on the most climactic parts of your design or things that you really want to bring out. All right, so I hope you found that useful and valuable. If you have any comments or questions, let me know in the comments below. And if you want to grab some of these sounds that you heard in this video, I have a library called my Melee Weapons Sound Effect Pack 1, which has a lot of similar sounds to this one. And yeah, you can grab it. I'll have a link in the description if you're interested in getting that. So thanks so much for watching all the way to the end. See you in the next video. Bye.